Well, hey guys, welcome back to What's Next Beyond Service. This is episode 14, and it's called Seal the Deal, and you'll know why here in a second. So today we're very excited to have with us Eli Crane. Eli served in the Navy as a Navy SEAL. He transitioned from service as an entrepreneur. Him and his wife Jen founded Bottle Breachers. They've had a lot of success with that. He's doing other things as well. He's a busy man, and most recently, and probably most importantly, he's decided to run for the United States Congress out of Arizona's first district. So we're going to talk about all those things, but now I just want to turn it over real quick and introduce Eli. Eli, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Eli. Looking at your LinkedIn profile, and a lot of folks that I'm connected with on LinkedIn, happen to watch this show. We're getting a larger audience because we post this on YouTube. So our following is starting to grow a bit. So most of the folks that are watching this right now probably know a little bit about you, but let's go ahead and talk to your story, because that's really what the power of the power of our story and my program is all about: finding out about the veterans and their success in transition, any stories that they can share to kind of shed the light on the path for folks that will be, coming our way after military service. So in looking at your profile, I see that in 2001, you joined the Navy, and it's September of 2001. So there's probably a connection there. So what was your story for joining the Navy?
Yeah, probably tens of thousands of Americans, I joined the Navy right after 9/11. Just because, I was in shock to see what went down, the attacks on our country. And I knew that America needed the next generation of war fighter and patriots to step up. And so, I wanted to do that, and I wanted to do it in the SEAL teams. So I joined the Navy and went to boot camp, went to Gunner's Mate A school, went immediately to BUDS training, which is basic underwater demolition SEAL school, and classed up with BUDS class P42. I made it through Hell Week, and then I was performance dropped, and I was sent out to the USS Gettysburg in Mayport, Florida for 2.5 years. And so, that was definitely, I planned on going in the military anyway, but that was the catalyst for me.
Right. And so, for those that, most of us know what SEALs do, but for folks that, don't really know much about the military, can you just give us the quick, snapshot of, what the SEALs do?
Yeah. So SEAL stands for Sea, Air, and Land. And basically, SEALs are the Navy's Special Operation Commandos. And your job is basically to be able to go in and do multiple different mission sets in basically every environment, coming from the land, the air, the sea, to do a number of different missions, from hitting a a gas oil platform, taking down a ship, diving, doing ship attacks, over the beach, desert warfare, urban warfare, all sorts of raids, CQB, close quarters combat, you name it. SEALs, have to be ready to do it.
Absolutely. I'm a retired Marine myself. I actually, in 2001, I just put on major, and 11 days later, 9/11 kicks off. And then within a year and a half, I was with the 15th MUSOC, rolling into Iraq in 2003 when we kicked the war off there. And we actually had some Navy SEALs with us. We had some other 3-letter agency folks with us, and we had a pretty unique mission. We went and secured the ports there at the Alpha Peninsula, and working with the SEALs was pretty cool. You guys absolutely are wired to what you do, and of all the special forces, I tend to think you guys probably do it probably the best out of the others, but they're all top tier organizations. But you guys absolutely bring something special to the fight. And thank you for your service, by the way, in the Navy, but in particular to you as a SEAL in that community. You guys are a tremendous asset. So now you did 13 years and 2 months. And then within that time, it looks like you had 3 deployments to Iraq in 06, 08, and 010. Any stories you want to share with us about any, unique things about your deployments?
Just, it was pretty cool. As you know, a lot of guys train their whole life in the military and never get to actually deploy, especially during the time of war. And, that sounds odd. I don't think it's necessarily, that people necessarily want to go to war, but, when you train to do a certain job, you want to try and do that job and get an opportunity to do that job. And so, I was fortunate to get out of training, in a time of war and be able to actually go overseas and use the skills that I got to train for. And so my first deployment was in Habaniya, Iraq.
All right.
And I only did 3 months on that one because my platoon, when I graduated, was already overseas, and so I went and joined midway. That was a pretty tough one, just being a new guy. Training in SQT, steel qualification training, was the highest level training that I got before deploying. We didn't even have night vision goggles during that training. We didn't have lasers on our weapon systems, and so you were definitely drinking from a fire hose, learning a lot, and just walking around on eggshells, trying not to screw up. And so it was a great deployment. So I learned a lot. I was with a great group of guys, and Iraq was pretty, still pretty hot at the time in 06. And then in 08, from 06 to 08, I worked for Chris Kyle, the American sniper. And that was his 4th and final deployment. So for your listeners and viewers that have seen the movie American Sniper, that's the very last deployment that you'll see in the movie. And we started doing a lot of desert patrols in that, and during that deployment. And then some of us rotated over to NSW Det Biop. And we were running missions into Sadr City to try and help the Iraqi contractors build that T-wall around Sadr City, so that basically we could control what went in and what went out, and then basically go in and get a handle on Sadr City, which was one of the most violent areas in Iraq for a very long time.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Hey,
sorry, and go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, let me do something. I'm seeing a little bit of latency here, so give me 1 second. I want to check one aspect here to make sure that we're good. So give me 1 second. Okay, yeah, we're good. I just want to make sure that the connections were, still functioning properly. So it looks like we're good. So you were talking about setting up, securing Sadr City. So yeah, go on. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, so that was my second deployment. Was all over Iraq during that deployment, and I wound up at the very tail end of it, going out to support that that group. And then from 08 to 2010, I was back at SEAL Team Delta Platoon. And that workup culminated with a deployment to Fallujah, Iraq.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. We all probably know a little bit about Fallujah. Yeah. Yeah. Something you said about your first deployment, but just about going to combat in general. That's what we do in the military, especially obviously the Navy SEALs, but certainly the Marine Corps. And you never know. You always think about it, but you don't know until you go. How you're going to perform, how things are going to go, and when you come back and you come back in one piece, you're blessed, right? Because a lot of our brothers and sisters don't. Certainly folks don't come back, but there are folks that come back and their bodies are changed, their minds, they've got things they struggle with. So it's you just never know how that's going to happen, and it's amazing to see it all come together too, to see the professionals do their jobs, to go beyond expectations, the bravery and the heroics that come out of a situation, and even out of folks that you might not expect, that step up and do tremendous things. So, well, okay, well, let's do this. Let's fast forward on your career here, Navy wise. So we're looking at 2014. You spent 13 years, 2 months, and transitions coming up. What was your primary reason for moving on from service? I'm sure there could have been many of them, but what was the most insightful reason you can give us?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons. I would say primarily, wanting to be around my family more. I spent a lot of time, watching my kids grow up in pictures. Didn't really care for that very much, and wanted to learn how to be a better dad and a better husband. And then also my body was getting pretty broken. My back was pretty jacked up. I had some stress fractures in my spine and some bulging torn discs. So even wearing body armor for 20 minutes was pretty excruciating. And then I also wanted a new too. So I felt like in many ways I'd done what I came to do, and it was time to move on and try something else. And that's when I, kind of caught the entrepreneurial bug and fell in love with the challenge and the potential upside that goes with starting your own business.
All right. Yeah, it sounds like we have a very similar profile for, transitioning out of service. And it sounds like you certainly have your priorities in line, with family first. And I noticed that you have 2 daughters. I've got 2 daughters as well. Mine are, a little older than yours, obviously. But yeah, that was kind of the bottom line for me was when you deploy, you deploy. That's what you do. You don't really have a choice, but no issues there. But when you have time, when you make decisions to be apart, that's where I was in my career. I just decided that the next steps were going to keep me away from my family for an extended period, and it wasn't worth it. So it was a joint decision. What my wife and I decided that, hey, I'm at 20. Let's move on. So, and I had back issues as well. So a lot of us that serve, right, when you're in a demanding field, that those things happen. So, okay, well, now as far as your transition here, talking about transition, when you think about that time leaving service and what you began, it looks like you began doing some of your stuff prior to leaving, so you had a jump maybe. But what was the most challenging thing for you transitioning from service? And it doesn't necessarily have to be anything about business. It could be, just getting used to not having your buddies with you or whatever that might be.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of it. I think one of the biggest things for me was starting a business with my wife. I think that starting a business in general is already difficult. Having a successful marriage is difficult as well. But when you mix those two together, it's really tough to like figure out who's doing what, how to respect one another, especially when things go sideways.
Right.
And honestly, my wife and I at that point hadn't even really lived together, we'd been married for about 10 years, but weren't around each other a lot just because of the the training and the deployment cycle in the team. So that was tough. And then I think one of the biggest things that, I think there was also, there was a lot of survivor's guilt in many ways, watching really close friends of mine not come home. And then also, I think one of the biggest things that a lot of us struggle with on transition is finding a new mission, right? Because I think many of us are hardwired for mission, and a lot of us don't even know that. We just think that, oh, I'm going to serve and then that'll be over with. And I'll go on. I'll find a new job where I can pay my bills and, have insurance and all that stuff. But when we don't realize that many of us are hardwired for service, and you remove that important part from your daily walk, your daily life, there's a huge hole for many of us. And some of us don't know even that there. And many of us try and fill that hole with all sorts of addiction, all sorts of nonsense that leads us down the wrong path. And so, that's something I've definitely noticed as I've gotten out. I've watched friends of mine get out. I've tried to, hire vets here. I've done a lot of mentoring, and I've noticed things that I think that we struggle with. And then one of the other things too, that I probably dealt with a little bit, and I notice a lot of vets deal with, is identity. I think a lot of us tie our identities up in what we used to do, right? And I noticed that, especially coming out of my community, it's like, oh, I'm a Navy SEAL, and that's what you are. And you worked so hard to get there, and then you became that. And then once you aren't that anymore, and you're trying to live in the past, and you're not willing to turn the page and realize that was just a job. It's a great job. It's a great career, and you should most certainly be proud of it. But if that's your identity, and then it's taken away from you, and you don't know how to move on and turn the page and have an identity that's grounded in things that cannot be taken away from you, I think you're always going to be on the struggle bus, and I think you're always going to be vulnerable.
No, absolutely. Eli, that's tremendous, brother. You nailed such a wide spot there in, a real short order. And those are exactly, everything you said is exactly right. I've been in the transition space now, working with veterans since about 2014, doing different things. And those are repetitive themes. Everyone, when you leave the military, most of us have a hole in our heart, right? And like you said, sometimes we don't even know it. A lot of times we don't know what that feeling is, and that loss of identity and that struggle, and not finding the right path. Folks go down that path, and so finding purpose in life beyond who you were, going past your previous identity. That's really hard. It's hard as a Marine too. The Marine Corps is an elite fighting force, and you're proud, but you do have to move on, and you have to remember that, it's okay. And it's important to connect with other veterans, because those are the folks that you have a lot in common with. So you might lose, connections with some of the folks you were serving with that are still active, but you need to reach out to other veterans, because that's where you're going to find goodness.
No, absolutely. I think, and that's why a big part of, my advice to vets that are transitioning or even struggling is to find a new mission. Like for me, I even though I was no longer in the SEAL teams or going on operations or in a training environment anymore, and around the guys that I loved and cared about, we were still able to find ways to serve. And, sometimes that meant partnering with a veteran nonprofit. Sometimes it meant, hiring, veterans or whatever it was, or even mentorship. It doesn't matter what that new mission set is for you, but if you got to find a new way to serve, and if you don't do that, you're going to continue to be struggling. You said something a second ago. You talked about a hole inside your heart, right? And a long time ago, I think it was Blaise Pascal that basically said, most of us spend our entire lives trying to fill a God-sized hole in our heart with, anything under the sun. And I'm paraphrasing there, but that's basically what he said. I've noticed that myself. You know, I've never been more fulfilled. I've never had more peace than, you know, when my relationship with God was, you know, on point. I'm a man of faith, and I talked about identity a second ago, and that's something that can never be taken from me. I talked about building a foundation and an identity on something that can never be taken from you, because if you tie your identity up in a job or a title or your marriage or a relationship, I mean, you're one phone call away from, you know, having your entire identity destroyed. And so it doesn't matter if you're a veteran, or, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, if you're a school teacher. You know, I think that that's advice that I would give anybody, that be very careful about what you tie your identity to.
Amen. I'm with you on that 100%. That's, you know, that's solid advice. Having stock in the world, you know, you have to some degrees, right? But understanding that higher purpose and connection absolutely matters. I absolutely. Okay, well, let's do this. Let's talk a little bit about your success with your, you know, your step into entrepreneurship. So in 2013, you and your wife are trying to figure out this thing called Bottle Breachers. You guys are in a one-car garage. There's a lot of successful folks that started out in the garage, right? And then a year and a half later, you get this opportunity, and you're in the deep end of the Shark Tank. You know, so why don't you pick it up from there and tell us, you know, a bit about that experience, and then what Bottle Breacher is, and, you know, why you're doing it.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was a great experience. I know we're all kind of wired differently. We all have different, you know, characteristics and whatnot. One of the things that I really have always gravitated towards is going big. And often that means that, you know, that means that there's a road lined with a lot of failure before achieving that big goal. And that's something that I like to talk about, because so much of success in my mind, your mindset and how you view failure. Do you see it as a stop sign, or do you see it as a detour sign? And I think those people that are the most successful people see failure as a part of the process, and not stop sign or turn back, you're going the wrong way. And so there's definitely been a lot of failure, but you know, Bottle Breacher was something that you know, it didn't start as the success story that people see on Shark Tank. It actually, my entrepreneurial journey started with a lot of adversity, a lot of being flexible, a lot of failure as well. And you know, it started when I was asked to partner in another startup called Acumen Performance Group with some of my friends, and that was a really cool business. They're still working today. You can go look them up online at acumenperformancegroup.com. And we were taking basically ideology and mental toughness training to the corporate world that we learned in the SEAL teams, to the corporate world, and to professional and collegiate sports teams. And it was really fun because I got to work with a lot of Olympians. I got to work with the Miami Dolphins, a bunch of other, you know, pro and collegiate sports, and just teaching them some mental toughness techniques. And so did that for a while, and then started Bottle Breacher at the same time. And
you had a tremendously full plate there. You know, I was debating whether to ask you about Acumen Performance Group. I saw you were the director of training there, but, you know, just for time, I wanted to, you know, focus in other areas. But yeah, that's tremendous. And you were doing that still on active duty, right? So,
yep.
You know, listening to everything you're saying, your bandwidth is quite incredible. And the part about tying in the failure to that is so important, because so many people, they fail and then they fail more by quitting. You know, they don't tough it out, and they don't understand that the road to success, there's a lot of bodies on that road of failure. And, you know, moving beyond that, a lot of times folks, they're afraid.
Yeah.
And, for different reasons, and they don't step out. But, when you were talking about doing all these things, and then in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about you being away, being deployed, the time with your wife is maybe on a sat call, or, if you're back on ship, maybe, you're online and you're emailing, and then you're missing your kids. And then all that comes back in one day. And it's like, whoosh, on top of, getting back to your family, figuring out what your relationship is with your wife, not stepping on all the things that she's been doing, not taking over in areas that you should really be smart about, right? When you kind of re-engage back in your relationship, and learning how to be a good dad, all those, you had so much on your plate there. That backstory is huge. I mean, no one knows that, most folks probably have no clue. So yeah, that's tremendous. And so, yeah, getting back to what you were saying about, moving forward with bottle breacher, all those challenges.
Yeah, going back to that family piece that you were hitting on, I noticed I was failing a lot with my own family, and I know that we don't typically talk about stuff like that, especially publicly.
Right.
But I want to talk about it because I know that there are a lot of people, especially in the veteran world, that as they make that transition, it's a very, very difficult time. And a lot of people find themselves in that boat where they're struggling. And so I want people out there to know that there is hope. You're not alone. You're not on an island. Most of us go through it. And for me, again, the medicine or the route was my faith to restoring those relationships, learning how to turn the page, learning how to be a present father and a present husband. And, I know this probably isn't the venue to, dive into that, but I just wanted people to understand that if you're at some point in your transition from the military into the private sector, please don't feel like, you're completely screwing it up if you have some strained relationships, or you're on the struggle bus there, because I think most all of us find ourselves there, and it's pretty, I think it's pretty normal part of the process. But yeah, it was a blessing to get to start a business with my wife. And I think, us having to, work through, one of the hardest things that you can do together actually made us stronger as a couple. And I'm grateful that not only was she there for me the entire time I was in the SEAL teams, where we have a 95% divorce rate, but she also stuck out starting a small business with me, and still helps me with it today. And one of the most amazing people I've ever met. And I don't know, man, I can't help but feel like God made her just for me. And
well, I think he must have, right? Hey, that's, this is a perfect form for everything you just said, right? Because everyone in the military is just as human as those who are not. And
Right.
we all have, those dynamics in life, and we all have decisions to make with how we move forward. And there were so many significant life events all laid on top of each other in kind of a small window for you, and her, and that's incredible that you guys have been able to move in the right direction. Now, again, there's struggles in marriages, and being a parent and all those things, but and that's part of why I'm doing this, is to bring these things out to folks who are going to be coming through that gauntlet, so they'll have the understanding of, well, hey, if Eli Crane was freaking dealing with that stuff, look at where he is now. Hell, I can do that too. So it's a little bit of motivation for folks. So
Can I pipe in for a second?
Well, actually, while we're in the interview, I appreciate your interest. If we could hold all questions to the end, if we have time, we'll go ahead and do that at the end. I thank you for your interest, though. So cool. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that, Eli. So your business, just if you could quickly just tell folks what it is, Bottle Breachers, what you guys do, what your business is.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we primarily make man gifts. It's not exclusive to men. A lot of women happen to like our gifts, and we think that's great. But due to the nature of our products being, bullets and rounds and grenades that open your beer, or are a coaster, or whatever, a whiskey bullet or whatever, that tends to be our target graphic. And we see a lot of wives and girlfriends buy for their men, and actually almost half of our buyers are women, just trying to buy gifts for their dad, their brother,
Wow.
whatever. It's really cool too, because we have a fleet of laser engravers, and we can personalize most of our products. And we just make a bunch of cool gifts that people like, and a lot of them happen to be once used to defend our country. And so it's just a cool, it started with a 50 cal round that opens a bottle or your beer, and we featured that on Shark Tank in 2014, and we got a deal with Mark Cuban, Larry, and quickly became one of the fastest Shark Tank companies of all time, growing Shark Tank companies of all time. And I think we've done over $21 million in sales. And so it's
Wow.
by no means a monster company. It's still a small company, but I'm just really proud of what we've done, and not only the products that we've made and created and sold, but also like I talked about that secondary mission of trying to give back, trying to support really good causes and really good people. So that's what it is.
It's fantastic. I've actually I bought a couple things. In fact, my brother-in-law, he retired from the Army. He did 30 years, and I bought him. It was a small gift. I got him other stuff, but this is something I threw in. Your bottle opener. That's like it's like the AR. I don't remember which weapon it is, but
Yeah.
and it has the Constitution inscribed on it.
Yep.
He loves beer, and so when he got that, he was over the moon. He was. So it was just something he wasn't expecting, but it's an amazing thing you're doing here, and it's very, very unique too. As you were talking about the sharks that you were involved with, how much do you interact with those guys now? Are they still involved at all with, mentoring or talking about, ways to do different things business wise, or?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely available. If you have questions, and they also have teams of people that help out their Shark Tank companies. So yeah, they're definitely available and accessible if you need their help. So,
Right.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to go on that show. I think one of the coolest things about it is that 12 million people to start with see your product, and it really gives the entrepreneur or small business a launching pad. But like a lot of things, it can be a double-edged sword. A lot of businesses are not prepared and ready to grow that fast.
Right.
Come down. And so, you got to be really careful you got to be really careful with injecting your business with that much attention that quickly, because I've seen a lot of Shark Tank companies crash and burn just because they weren't ready for the huge spike and then the recession that almost always follows. So
Right.
it's a blessing for us, and we happen to time the wave and ride it, and I'm grateful.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've always wondered about that, because I was thinking the same thing. How many folks, of course, if you're on the show, you're motivated, right? And you have hopefully, you got a vision on how you want to grow your business. But yeah, I would imagine that's just a huge infusion, and, getting past that first, bow wave is probably, as you said, not something that everyone's going to be able to make their way through. So, hats off to you guys again for being successful in navigating that, because that there's a lot going on there. So, okay, well, I see also, aside from the business that you're running, you and your wife, now this part, I'll have to say, it's never good to be envious of anybody. But when I see that you're a 6-hour brand ambassador, that just goes all through me because that looks
Yeah.
like a fun thing to do. Yeah, I'm sure there's more to it than just having fun, or maybe not. But tell us a little bit about what you're doing with Sig Sauer, and then some folks might not even know what Sig Sauer is. So if you want to just kind of explain about their what they do firearms wise, and then again what you're doing as a brand ambassador.
Yeah, thank you. That it has just been an amazing job to be a brand ambassador for Sig Sauer. It's interesting because Sig Sauer probably the largest firearms manufacturer in the world if you combine everything that they do, because they have their own optics, they have their own suppressors, they have pistols, carbines. Now they've gotten into machine guns. They have their own ammunition. So for me, it makes it an amazing job because I get to, test out a lot of their stuff. And they do a bunch of events, but it's also inspiring working for them as well because, 16 years ago, I believe they were bought for $1 in conglomerate deal, and nobody was expecting anything of them. Nobody wanted SIG at the time. And due to amazing leadership, they've been able to build just an amazing made in the USA company up in New Hampshire. And I think they employ about 30 to 40% of their 2,500 people on staff are veterans. So they're doing a bunch of awesome work, and they do a lot of stuff with our Department of Defense, which I think is really cool. And the people there are just really, really awesome people. And I'm blessed and grateful to work with them.
Absolutely. And an American success story is always something, positive, right? That we should always be excited about that, no matter what it is. And yeah, now I recall seeing a video of you, taking out the Rattler when it was, off the shelf. Do you have one of those, or what was that experience like? It looked like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I have two of them actually. I have the 5
Nice.
and 300 Blackout, and they're amazing weapons. I think the shorter one that I have, the 5.56, was actually designed for the British SAS, and
Okay.
they needed a 5.56 round that was very very compactable and concealable, and so that's a really, really cool weapon system. And then the 300 Blackout is just an amazing gun. It's great when you're teaching like a child how to shoot, because it doesn't recoil, it's not loud. And I found that those are two things right there that really, scare people and stop people from shooting and training, is the recoil and the noise. So that's that.
Yeah, I was, you probably noticed that I was looking at your LinkedIn profile off and on, just kind of doing an intel gathering and whatnot. And one of the videos you were firing one of the pistols. I don't recall which one it was, but it had the optic sight on it with the red dot sight.
Yeah.
And, you were just so amazed that you just pulled it right out, first time, pulled up, started shooting, and you're hitting the target. You didn't have to do any adjustments, and you were so thrilled with, hey, that might not happen with every occasion, but the fact that you were just able to pull right out and start using it and having that level of accuracy, that says a lot, I think, about the product.
Yeah, it does. And pretty amazing that SIG is sighting these things in at the factory, so that when you show up, when it shows up at the gun store that you pick it up from, it's ready to be used. And shooting red dot isn't something I did in the military, but if you ever get a chance to if you do shoot handguns, if you ever get a chance to train with red dot and transition to it, it takes a couple days to figure it out and to get good at finding that dot and working through the sight picture. But once you figure it out, man, it'll definitely improve your the range that you can shoot at and your accuracy. So that's been fun, getting to go to SIG and learn from some of the best instructors in the world at their SIG Academy, and just learn a different form of shooting.
All right. Oh yeah, like I said, that's kind of jealous. It looks really cool. just a quick story with me. Back in '97, I was with security forces in the Marine Corps, and that's when the red site was just at least here stateside, and they came and about 4 or 5 of us got to go out on the range and start using those bad boys, and it's pretty amazing. I love to shoot, and I was able to quickly bring it in, and you're right. It adds range and it refines your accuracy. It's pretty cool. So, okay, well, hey, enough of me being envious. Let's let's move on to something that's absolutely a huge deal, and it's important for everybody, particularly the folks in the state of Arizona. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, you have decided to make a run for Congress, the United States Congress in Arizona's 1st District. So you're choosing to go and serve your country once again. Why are you doing this?
Yeah, I'm doing it, because I love this country. I know you do as well. And I'm very concerned about the state that it's in. I'm concerned just seeing what I see on the horizon in so many different ways and levels. And we also, you and I swore an oath to protect this country from foreign and domestic threats. And I think some of the biggest threats to this country right now are within. And so instead of complaining about it and griping about it, I want to go do something about it. And so that's exactly what we're doing.
Roger that. In fact, you've already answered one of my questions I was gonna ask in terms of your priorities and what you see, and I think you've nailed what mine would probably be as well. Let's talk a little bit about Arizona. What do you see? What's the biggest challenge for Arizona that you see right now, and whatever that might be?
Yeah, no, I think what I've noticed on the campaign trail, and I know controversial issue, so I'll definitely acknowledge that. But one of the biggest issues in Arizona is actually election integrity. I travel all over the place. I'm at events, multiple events every week where concerned Arizonans, from all walks of life, come and they get to tell you what they're concerned about, what keeps them up at night, what they're worried about. And we hear the same themes, but in Arizona, the top concern seems to be election integrity. And as some people know, Arizona is where the audit was held in Maricopa County. That's one of the counties in Arizona. One of the reasons that it was held here is because Arizonans were very, very loud in their concern, for what happened in our, election. And they just wanted to get to the bottom of it, and they want to make sure that we continue to have tight elections. That's something that I'm very concerned about too. I want to make sure that we have tight elections. I think that's so pivotal and so foundational in a republic, democratic republic like ours. Is that to make sure that not only legal votes are counted, but that nobody else's vote nobody else's vote, is greater or less than anybody else's. And I think that in like anything else in government that's done on such a large scale, I think if you're not, if you get complacent with something like that, and you're not, and you don't have pretty strict implementation and pretty strict rules and regulations that are followed, and people are held accountable when those laws and regulations and procedures aren't being followed through with, you can quickly find yourself in in trouble. And I think that's one of the things that we've seen in Arizona and across the country. It kind of surprises me and even appalls me a little bit that there's such pushback on the people of this country, performing audits on their own elections. Right. If you heard people in the media saying, and in politics on both sides of the aisles, this isn't a partisan issue to me. And I've heard Republicans and Democrats say that these are the freest, most transparent elections that we've ever had. And yet at the same time, if other people say, okay, if that's the case, then show me the receipt. I want to actually audit the election and I want to prove that to me. Those same people are, that you're a kook or a conspiracy theorist. And to me,
Right.
it should never work that way. Whether it's a business or, an election, I think that audits are, healthy. I think that and I think that tight election and, election integrity is something that we should all strive for, because I think it protects all people, in this country, whether you're an independent, a Democrat, or a Republican. And so that's the big issues here that I'm going to fight for. And then one of the other ones is, securing our southern border, because there is a lot of, we continue to bolster the cartels. The cartels take a piece of everything that comes through that southern border illegally, whether it's human trafficking, whether it's drug trafficking. And there's a lot of, gang members that come through that country. And honestly, there's also a lot of just, good people that want to come to this country and get a taste of the American dream. And I totally get that.
Right.
And if I was south of the border and I wanted my family to have a better life, I would probably try and get my family to the US too, but I would try and do it legally. I think that that's what we need to see more of that. And, especially during the pandemic, it does not make sense at all that Border Patrol agents are fired for not taking a vaccine, yet tens of thousands, actually hundreds of thousands of, illegals are coming across that border every single month, and they're not being forced to get vaccinated. And then they're just being transported throughout the country, sometimes in the dead of night, which has a shadiness and a very suspiciousness about it. And I just see a lot of mismanagement. I see a lot of ignorance. I see a lot of corruption. And more importantly, I see very few men and women who are willing to die for it, who are willing to jump back into that just monstrosity that the U.S. government has become, and try and, put their shoulder to the wheel and make change.
Right. Yeah. Well, as if I was an Arizonan, everything you just said, I would be checking off as Roger that, good to go. And I think you were dead on with the way people are reacting to the issues of accountability in elections. That should be one of the most sacred things we do as citizens, is to vote. And your vote has to count, and it has to be a legitimate process. And, I'm an observer of politics. I've been that way since I was a kid. And, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I'm also not the dumbest. And I can assess, and I can look at numbers, and I can see, and I believe that there's absolutely a problem, and it needs to be addressed. We need to be able to pull back the covers and look at what's laying in the bed there. And that's exactly the way you do it. Just like you said, demanding accountability. And for the folks that are saying that there's nothing to see, right. That's absolutely not the case. So, well, I'm glad to hear what you said, because I think all those things absolutely matter. So let's look at this way. You get elected, and you're heading up to DC, and you're going to start doing great things, not only for the state of Arizona, but also for our country. That's why you're doing this. What are some areas that you see that are things that you can find common ground with? What are the things that you would want to, break bread with on folks from the other aisle to try to make headway? What are some of those areas?
Well, I think that there's some folks on the other side of the aisle that want some fiscal responsibility. I think a lot of people realize that, we've got $30 trillion in debt right now. Nancy Pelosi right now is trying to, put another bill forward and pass another piece of legislation that would cost the American taxpayer $3.5 trillion. And there's a couple of Democrats that said that they wouldn't vote for it. So I think that there's still people on the other side of the aisle that are, understand that, like, you could never run your household that way. You most certainly couldn't run your business that way, where you just continue to spend and spend and spend, and you never have a budget. and you never pay off any of your debts. And a lot of people don't realize, but a lot of the debt that we pay off, on a yearly basis is we're only paying interest. We're never paying into the principal of the debt.
That's right.
We just continue to add up more and more debt. And so I think that's something that, there might be some room to work across the aisle. And, the way I'm going to look at this is I'm going to look at it like, and I know a lot of people probably won't like this, but just because of the analogy, but I'm going to look at this as just like I did going to war overseas. And like, when you go to war, a lot of people don't realize this, but when you show up, a lot of times you do things like turnover operations where you go on operation with the folks that were there before you. You keep your mouth shut, you keep your eyes open, you keep your head on a swivel. You figure out who are the threats in this environment, who are the allies, who can I partner with, who's going to stab me in the back as soon as they get a chance, what to be careful of, what's the culture here. And, I think I'm going to have to learn very quickly, but I'm just going to, I'm going to try and assess, the battleground that I'm going into and try and figure out who's who in the zoo, where can I get stuff done. And as soon as I, get on my feet there, I'm going to start taking shots at, implementing. And that's one of the cool things about coming from an entrepreneurial world as well, because in entrepreneurship, you can have a plan all day long. You can have a business plan all day long, but as Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Everybody's got a plan until, the first thing you try and implement fails. And then are you creative enough? Are you humble enough to build a team around yourself of smarter, more talented people that can help you, push something across, the line? And so I think it's going to be challenging. I don't expect, a warm welcome necessarily. I expect this to be very challenging. And I expect it to be a lot like war, where you've got to figure out who's who in the zoo and build a coalition and get after it.
Yeah, I think that's a timely and dead on analogy that you're using there. And I think that's another reason why we need more people like you, more veterans, to get involved and go back into service in the same vein that you're looking to serve, because we absolutely need people that can do all those things that you just said, folks that have been there, they understand, a dynamic environment, how to operate in that environment. And your opening days, your opening time up there, as you just laid out, I think is very, very smart, to kind of see the lay of the land, before you necessarily jump right into the thick of things, so that you can, I think, okay, your mic's back on then. Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at my watch here. We're about 3 minutes out from an hour. And as I said, I want to be a good steward of your time. We did talk a little long on some things, which is fine. A couple of the questions I had, I think just based on some of your comments, I think I already know the answers to. Let me leave you. I got two things here in parting. What should and this, this is a controversial topic, but I'm going to lay it at you anyhow. What do you think accountability should look like regarding our retreat from Afghanistan? And, from a political and a military perspective.
Oh man, that's so good. I've read a lot of the stories that I'm sure you have. To me, it's appalling and atrocious to see what happened and went down. However, I would, I want to be really careful what I say about what the media reports, just because there's always two sides to every story. However, I know that there was a lot of line that went on from the top levels of leadership in this country, and I would like to see some of our generals and some of our top military officials be held accountable and be fired. We used to have a military where if you were not getting it done in war, you got canned. I would also like to see leaders, because some of these leaders have even come out, in congressional hearings and said that they told President Biden that they recommended we leave 2,500 troops behind. What might happen if we pulled everybody out the way we did? So I think, the truth often lies somewhere in the middle, but
Right.
to me, it's a disgrace how that went down. The fact that I feel like I could have given, a focus group of middle schoolers that scenario and been like, hey, this is the situation. This is what we're up against. This is what we're trying to accomplish. You guys have an hour to kind of come up with a plan here on how to do it. And I guarantee you the plan that they came up with wouldn't have been, hey, we're going to take out the guys with guns. And then we're going to, hope that our enemy, allows our friends and our allies free passage out of the country. And that's the thing that bothers me. It's like at some point you have to quit just describing, wholesale ignorance to the people that are, running this country. I think that there's a level of incompetence for sure, but I think you can only blame so much of it on incompetence, and
Right.
I know a lot of people don't want to make that jump, but again, you can only, I don't think that people are that stupid.
Right.
I just really don't. I don't think that people are that stupid. I don't think that, again, going back to the pandemic where we have, businesses that are shut down, mask mandates, vaccine mandates, and then you're letting hundreds of thousands of people cross our southern border that aren't forced to be vaccinated, and they're just being put into, communities. That doesn't make any sense either. So,
Right. Well, they're not being tested either, I've heard, to some degrees, which is completely against the narrative, right?
Exactly. And it doesn't make any sense. And so, again, I'm not going to ascribe just wholesale ignorance to everything. And I know that we would like to do that, because, once you take that off the table and say, hey, maybe it's not complete, maybe it's not complete ignorance, maybe there's something more to, and I don't want to be
Right.
conspiracy, but at some point, let's be honest. Do you think that these people that are running our country are that stupid? Because I honestly don't. I look at their educations, I look at where they came from, and it's either they don't have a common sense bone in their body, they're completely wrong and ignorant at every turn, or maybe they don't want America to look like it's always looked. And where I'm really going is this, and I say this all the time. I don't think that it's possible to usher in socialism, communism, or more government control when things are going well. I really don't. I think you have to create chaos. I think that's warfare 101.
Right.
And I think and I'm not saying everybody's implicated in that. Please understand, I'm not saying everybody's implicated. I do think there's some, but I do think that there are folks that do not want we, the people of this country, to have the power anymore. I don't think they like our Constitution, our Bill of Rights. I don't think they like anything about this country. And I think they want massive overhaul and massive change, where it's more of a top-down, rule. And I don't think they can get there while things are going well. We're free, we're prosperous. And so I think that's a lot of what you see, driving what's so.
Well, Eli, I agree. I mean, and I think it's a lot easier to see that when you're looking from the outside in. I think those folks that are inside, they've been there probably too long, and they see what's in the bubble, and they become, immune to all the things that are really happening outside of their sphere up there at the Beltway. And most folks can look and see that things aren't right, and you're right. There are a lot of smart folks, they go up there and they come back millionaires. And that's kind of an interesting concept in itself. But, we need folks that are going to have that mindset that you're talking about and go up there with fresh eyes, with understanding the importance of the Constitution, what that means to our existence as Americans, and that we need to stay the course in those areas that have got us to where we are today. And these people that are purposely doing things, they need to be held to account, right? That's a huge thing that folks I think a lot of folks see that and they understand that. So, well, let me ask you a quick question here. We're a couple minutes over. I know your time. You've got a lot of things boxed in. Do you have any time? And it's fine if you don't, to entertain any questions, or do you have to move on to the next event?
Yeah, I could do a couple questions.
Okay. Well, yeah. Let me see if we've got anybody here that's ready to ask a question. So, the gentleman that had come in earlier, if you're still here and want to ask a question, yeah, please do so.
That would be me. I several things. The first is that in my home, I'm 77 years old, by the way. I went into service in 1961. So I'm a little older, and I have to admit that it took me a long time to get a little wiser too. But I and my wife make the Lord the head of our household. And that's just for starters. And we serve our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren by example rather than edict. And that's been important. What you described earlier about going into Congress is, and this is a subject that will be repeated often, is situational awareness. And when I left the Navy after 10 years, and I was assigned to diplomatic intelligence while I was there, but when I left the Navy, I too was looking for some way to serve because I guess I'm just kind of hardwired for it. And so I became a police officer and succeeded in that, and then wound up as the head of the anti-terrorist unit at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and saw a lot of things that were not right. And in my particular job, I wasn't in a position to do much about it. And so, Elijah, I truly wish you well, and will pray for you that you A, succeed, and B, don't get crushed in the stampede.
I appreciate that, sir. And I think expectation management is always important. I do expect an amount of crushing to take place. I don't think that any individual goes into the heart of monstrosity like our federal government has become, and you just like that. I don't think that that's realistic. Thankfully, I know I'm not alone. I know I'm going to be meeting with multiple special forces guys next week in Washington, D.C., who are all trying to do the same thing I'm doing. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm hoping that enough of us, if we put our shoulder to the wheel, we can get something done. And so, but back to your point, I'm with you 100% on, what you focus on, what the authority in your life is. And that gives me the strength to know that this isn't about me. This story is not about me. It will never be about me. But, I do believe one day I will be held in account for the life that I've lived and what I've done with the skills and time and ability that God has given me. So let's go. Let's do everything we can.
Yeah, amen to that. And it's a good thing that you're going to be meeting up with those other guys that you just talked about, guys and gals maybe that are up there, that want to bring you into the fold, and because you need that. You need those like-minded folks. Well, okay. Well, look, let's do this. Let's go ahead. We're at about almost 8 after. Let's go ahead and wrap this up, Eli. I want to give you just a couple seconds here for closing comments. Anything that that you're thinking about, maybe didn't get a chance to say or convey here. If you just want to take a couple seconds or whatever to wrap up.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity. Like I said, I think that many of us that are getting out, there's this I think there's this misconception that you have a reported at least 22 veteran suicides a day. And that's only because all the states don't report that data. And I think there's
Right.
a perception that most of that is due to PTSD that comes on the back of, and if we're being honest, the majority of, people in the military never even see combat. And it's not at all that's not a criticism at all. What I want to say to, anybody that might see this or hear this is, I believe those numbers are probably pretty close, but to me, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, and that too many of us put our identity in the wrong place. We put our identity in our service. Not enough of us do a good job finding a new mission, which most of us are hardwired for, and a lot of us isolate. And we try and go into transition, with the John Rambo, I got this on my own mentality. And the last point I will make is that I really believe that Blaise Pascal was on something. I do believe we all have a God-sized hole in our heart. Most of us, instead of filling it with a relationship with him, are trying to fill it with sex, drugs, rock and roll, and anything else that we think might numb the pain, give us a bit of temporary pleasure. It always leads to the same thing. So that's all I want to end with, and just say thank you for the opportunity. And I hope somebody out there got something out of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if it's just one person, I always say, all the things that that go to helping people. You're a tremendous man, Eli. You're a husband, a father, a friend to many, I'm sure, a successful entrepreneur. And thank God that someone of your caliber has taken up the sword and shield again, and you're moving towards the sound of the gunfire. We need men like you and women to do the same thing. And I thank you for that. I also thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be on the show today. Everything you said was tremendous. And your closing comments, I think, are going to resonate. Everything you said, I think, is going to resonate. But your closing was so strong and meaningful. And I hope it'll touch some hearts and minds of folks that need to hear that. So thank you again for being with us. Much success to you in your candidacy. And I hope we're seeing you up there on Capitol Hill making things happen.
All right, brother. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Okay. God bless.